Something a little different for you guys today. If you remember a few months back, I put the shout out to any expats in Laos wanting to volunteer their time, have a sit down and fill us in about their life here in Laos, why they're here, what they're doing here and what they think of it in Laos. So hang around, that's what's coming up. Got one of the longest serving expats in Laos coming here today.
The standard of living I have here is way higher than the standard of living I would get on my salary if I was a teacher in the UK. Single men who come here get drowned in offers. And that is my idea of a nightmare. It's like actually, like, you know, literally shitting yourself on a bus full of other people and having to sit there. I mean, there's an undercurrent of very sad men who end up kind of washed up in Asia because they haven't really managed to make it anywhere else.
Okay, guys. Okay, I'd like you to meet Lynn. Lynn is, as I said, one of the longest serving expats here in Laos. So she's volunteered her time to share her experiences, what she thinks of Laos, why she's here in Laos, and whatever else more. Welcome.
Whatever else comes up.
Yeah, whatever else comes up. So, what brought you here to Laos?
It's a long story, but the short of it is I was teaching abroad anyway, and I decided that I wanted to do some voluntary work. So I applied to an organisation in England called Voluntary Service Overseas.
Yeah.
And they send people to various parts of the world, but they do actually ask you about where you want to be sent.
Okay.
So I sort of said Nepal or Indochina.
Yep.
And they happen to have some positions that were available for teacher trainers in Laos.
Yeah, yeah.
In 1999, there was almost nothing you could find out about Laos.
I was just going to ask you, had you heard of Laos?
I'd heard of Laos.
Besides the war and
exactly.
the turmoil.
Yeah, that was all I knew about it, was I knew the name in relationship to the Vietnam War. But there was a Lonely Planet out at the time, and there was one report in the VSO offices that was written by a volunteer that was here, and that was all the information that I had to go on. But geographically, I thought it looked interesting. And the placement they were offering me in Nepal was really, really remote, and I didn't fancy my chances on that one. So I chose the Lao placement.
Very different winters. Nepal compared to Laos.
Although nobody warned me how cold Xian Quang was going to get.
Yeah.
So I came here in like late summer of 1999.
Yeah.
And I was stationed in Vientiane first to do a little bit of language training. And then they sent us off to our various placements. And at that time, almost pretty much Xian Quang was like really like anybody just knew about the plain of jars, but not much else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the two women I came with, one of them was going to be in Luang Prabang, based in Luang Prabang, and the other one was going to be based in Savannah Cat. And people's reactions when we said where we were going were just very, very different between them and me. So they'd be asking Carolyn, where are you going to go? She'd say, oh, I'm going to be in Luang Prabang. And they're like, oh, wonderful, it's great, such a nice place. And Gillian was asked, where are you going? Savannah Cat. Oh, brilliant, on the border with Thailand, so much you can see, blah, blah. Yeah. Where are you going? Xian Quang. And then you'd get this kind of like face drop, and then people would go, it's interesting. And I'd be like, oh God, where am I going?
Yeah, it does get chilly there, doesn't it?
99 was the coldest winter they'd had in about 11 years. Yeah. And it went down to pretty much freezing. And all I had were t-shirts, sins, shorts. Yeah. I hadn't prepared myself for cold weather at all. I was freezing. I was so cold I cried. I was like, because I was just in a concrete, I was living in the dormitory. Yeah. So it was a dormitory block, and there was no heating, there was nothing, there was no fire. And I was miserable. For like the first 2 months, I was miserable.
Okay. Wow. You've been here 20 years. What do you miss most about the First World?
It's not really things that I miss. I think probably good medical service that's very close. Like when I first came here, there was always the fear that you would get seriously hurt.
Back then, in
an accident, like, you know, where would you be able to go? Now that the hospitals are much better, that's become less of an issue.
They're improving a lot, yeah. And I didn't even know about the new Thailand one that Chris pointed out.
Yeah, Kasamrad.
Last week.
Yeah. No, I've never been there.
That's really good. Yeah, but even the new Mitapub hospital.
Yeah, it's a lot better now than it used to be.
it is a very big void that's been filled. So no, it's really good. What do you like most about living here? You must like something because you're still here 23 years.
Going back to kind of things that I miss, there are other things I miss about the UK. I miss hiking in the countryside. I do find I'm a typical Northern European, so the really hot weather kind of puts me off doing a lot of the outdoor stuff that I would do in Europe. But the things that I love, but I also love the weather here. I love the fact that every day that I get up, it's sunny.
Yeah, you don't have to put warm clothes on. That's what I like. It does get miserably hot, you know, between March and June.
It does, yeah.
Oh, it is unbearable, but I don't miss the cold weather.
I love how cheerful it makes me. I mean, it really is a serious thing. Like when you wake up and it's sunny and it's beautiful outside, you open your curtains and you just think, you know, it's very hard to be in a miserable mood when everything around you is like bright and beautiful. And it is beautiful here. Yeah. And I think we forget that. So even in Vientiane, I mean, it's so green. Yeah. It still is so green.
Yeah, you know, even when we travel, you know, we think we've seen a lot of the places, but every trip we go on, we seem to find another gem. You know, oh, you got to go here. You know, it's incredible just how diverse this place is.
There's never been a place that I've been to in Laos that I've hated.
Yeah.
Like even back then, and people, you know, I mean, particularly back when I first came, seeing a foreigner was much more unusual, and you did sort of feel a little bit like an animal in a zoo sometimes. when I first went to Sikhottabong,
the looks you get.
I had to because we didn't have electricity or running water there, so I had to take my clothes down to the well to wash them.
Yeah.
And that turned into a complete spectator sport. Every single time that I walked down, there would be a group of people following me just to watch the Falang wash
how
the
they
clothes.
wash. Oh, wow.
You know, will she cope with actually being able to pull the water up from the well? And it was.
Had you washed like that before?
Never, no, never. That was it was interesting.
Did you just teach yourself, or you just watched others, or?
Well, there's always a group of people down by the well doing it. The first time I felt quite self-conscious because I'm not the strongest person in the world, and hauling up water is actually quite tiring from a well. But for me it was kind of fun because it was a new experience.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And the buffalo follow you down because they like the taste of soap in the water. So when they know that you're going to the well, the buffalo that used to roam around the college grounds used to follow you down because they like to lick at the soapy, sudsy water.
Makes you wonder if there's nutrients in it that they're actually...
I'm sure it can't be good for them. I'm sure it can't, but...
Well, it's not good for us, is it? But buffalo, in 99, in Sikhottabong, did you have any bad experiences there, you know, just because you were a foreigner in that part of Laos, you know, because of the history?
I never had any bad experiences in Laos ever with people. In Sikhottabong, as I say, like the situation, because I was cold, I didn't have the right clothes. I was kind of miserable at the beginning, and unbeknownst to me, one of the men who worked at the college, he'd lived in Australia, and so they kind of had a meeting before I arrived up there, like, you know, how to deal with the foreigner who's going to be on campus, and he told them that because I'm a Westerner, I would want more privacy than perhaps a Lao person would. Yeah. And so I spent the first few weeks thinking that nobody wanted to meet me because I didn't get invitations to go anywhere, and I was waiting for invitations.
Okay.
And of course, all the Lao people were just waiting for me to turn up, because that's what you do. You just turn up to somebody's house and invite yourself in, and that would be fine. And so there was this kind of like, there was a couple of weeks, I guess, like about a month maybe, of sort of miscommunication where I was thinking, oh God, nobody really is that interested, and they were all thinking, oh God, she must be really like not wanting to get to know us.
You pointing that out, that is something that's very different here. You know, if we don't hear somebody knocking here, you know, I'll be in there editing, and then all of a sudden I'll just see somebody walking around inside the living room, and that look, they don't just go away. They'll come looking for you inside your house, you know.
And that was literally what everyone was waiting for me to do, was just turn up and kind of like, you know, invite myself in and say hi. And once we sorted that out, then things were great. And honestly, the people could not have been nicer, could not have been more friendly, more warm, more welcoming. I had such a great time living there. Such a great time.
So how long were you there?
I was there for 3.5 years.
3.5 years. Okay.
And it was some of the best times. And I'm really glad that when I came to Laos, I started by living in the provinces, because it made a big difference then to kind of, I mean, it sounds a bit pretentious, but I kind of got to know the real Lao, and then moved to Vientiane. Whereas it's not, if you're in Vientiane, you don't ever really get such an experience as you do if you live in the provinces.
And it's the same as a lot of the larger tourist destinations here. People, I've travelled all over Laos, Vientiane, Vang Vieng, Luang Prabang.
It's not the same.
You do not, beautiful places, and you will get a great experience, but it's just not the same as getting out into the rural areas and
at the time when I lived there, it's like, because there was only me and there was one other couple who lived in Ponsavan, a Danish guy and an English wife, and they were working on some irrigation project or something further out. They were the only ones who were in town, so it's like everybody knew who I was. Like after I'd lived there for a few months, it was just like, everybody knew me. And when I went into the marketplaces, it's like I had the same people I went to that I bought stuff off of, and you just suddenly become part of the community little by little. And it was lovely. I mean, people were just lovely. They were so kind. I mean, every wedding, every celebration that went on, I was invited to. It was.
How have you stayed so healthy looking? I am really struggling. I am. Because there's always something to celebrate here, and when people come over, and it's the good food and the drink, and
avoiding the Lao was a hard one. Like, my first birthday at Sikhottabong at the college, I have never been so drunk in my entire life. I mean, honestly, never been so drunk. We started off and they were making a big thing of my first birthday there. They, again, as I said, so kind. But the director of the college started off by giving me a bottle of Johnny Walker to share with people. So we started off on the whiskey. Then it moved to beer Lao. Then we went to the party place and someone had a jar of Lao Hai. And Lao Hai, with the long straws that you have to drink out of. That stuff is lethal. Absolutely lethal. And between that and then the shots of Lao Lao that I did in between, by the end of the evening, I'd lost my shoes and I couldn't walk. I literally couldn't walk. I had to be carried back to my dormitory room. I've never been that drunk in my life. And when you celebrate with Lao people, it's very difficult to remain sober.
Oh, yeah. They just keep going, and every time somebody wants to drink, it is cheers, nyuk nyuk, just, and then they're telling you finish, and
I mean, I have to say, as a woman, I think I get away with that a little bit better than a guy does. So I can often just claim I'm a light drinker and I can't cope with that kind of thing, and then I get out of it. But
for a guy, they just keep pressing you, and you'll be alright. Here's an interesting one. Your response when people feel they need to tell you that it's a communist country,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions I think about Lao people as well, and the communist one is one of them. It's like you would never know. It's a one-party system, and there are issues with that. But it's just something in day-to-day life here that you would never think. It's not a communist in the same way that China isn't really a communist country. It's like it's a capitalist country with it's a one-party system.
Yeah, I think people compare communism with like North Korea, and even North Korea was in a communist country. But when I first travelled here, I knew it was a communist country, and then I'm here, and I was on my first trip in 2014 down to Savannah with Neenee. And I actually said to her after a couple of days, this is a communist country, isn't it? She didn't really understand the question, but
even if you ask people here, if you actually often ask Lao people what system of government you have, they say democracy, because it's the Lao People's Democratic Republic. So the actual what makes a democracy and what makes communism is not really something that most people are truly kind of aware of what it actually means. And I think here basically you get on with your day-to-day life. But the one thing you don't want to do here is get on the wrong side of the government.
No,
that's the problem. It's like you have no recourse if you do.
And the biggest thing about it just being a one-party rule, which does make Lao, the people in Lao, more closely knitted, is there is not that division. There isn't the left and the right. Look what voting has done. I'm all for a party being democratically voted in, but there's got to be a better way than dividing the people. They are just at each other. Look what happened, Brexit in the US, they're at each other's throats.
And I would say, like, people probably imagine as well, when they say a communist country, that the Lao government is sort of ramming things down people's throats. And there definitely are occasions of that. Things like land being taken for projects and etc. There are bad issues on that. But on other things there aren't. In terms of, for example, the vaccination. The Lao government has not made it mandatory. They're not forcing people to take it.
True.
But they are making it incredibly available and encouraging everybody, including the foreigners who live here.
Yeah.
Even from day one, it was never a question of like, you're going to have to wait or you're going to be last in line because you're a foreigner, which is what Thailand did. In Laos, it's like, you live here, you are here, get vaccinated. Yeah,
they treated everybody, no matter whether you were a foreigner living here, whether you were a foreigner stuck here, or a Lao national. Everybody was treated the same. That was incredible.
So I don't ever. It's one of those kind of weird things. It always, a communist country. It's like it never feels the slightest bit like that.
No. I guess it just comes down to how it is run.
And I think in many ways
people are still stuck in the 60s and 70s as far as the red commies. The commies are coming. But.
So life is good.
So you can have a healthy lifestyle being a teacher here. I know you're not just a teacher, but for people coming over who are qualified, because I get the question a lot, do teachers get paid okay here for a foreigner to have a healthy lifestyle here?
Yes, as long as you are not expecting to be getting the kind of salary you would in the UK.
Yeah.
Or America or whatever.
Yeah. But that balances out with the actual cost of living here.
Absolutely.
And rent and things like that here.
The standard of living I have here is way higher than the standard of living I would get on my salary if I was a teacher in the UK. Plus which I would be out of my mind in terms of the stress and bureaucracy and administration and all the other stuff that teachers have to deal with in a Western country. Here, basically, as long as I'm good at my job and I do what I'm supposed to do, I'm given a lot of freedom within that space. I don't have to deal with Ofsted inspections and writing out ridiculous reams of paperwork to be able to step foot in a classroom and teach someone. I think here there are the difficulty here is that, like with a lot of Asian places, there are a lot of sort of cowboy schools. So if you care about what you do, if you want a more professional way of working, then you have to be careful about which school you choose. But again, if you only want to work a few hours a week, a couple of hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week, you can still make enough money to live here. And for a lot of people, that's very appealing. So you cut down on kind of what you want out of life, your smaller salary, but you have a lot more free time.
Other than teaching, what other sort of industries can an educated person go into over here without having to open up a business or things like that?
Mainly NGO work. So it would be mainly related to all of the different NGOs that work over here. And there are particular areas here like mining, irrigation, agriculture, where they need, people along those lines. But I think those are really it.
Yeah.
There's not
there's not the job opportunities like we've got back home.
I think
it's very specialised.
What
you can do
what you can do here. And I think teaching is probably one of the easier routes into a country like this. But you'd have to be prepared to be thinking about what kind of teaching you want to do, what you're prepared to do, and if you want to do it in a good environment, in a good school, there aren't that many of them here.
During the late 80s, 90s and that, there was a big exodus of Lao people going to the US and other countries to study, but they'd settle there. Is that changing now, you think? They're going and studying, but they're coming back and making a go of it here in their own country.
The Lao government is not stupid. Part of the kind of qualifications for the Australian Award Scholarship, if you are in the government sector, is that you have to work for a certain number of years when you come back in the government sector. So you're not free to stay. But very rarely actually do the students kind of want to leave Laos permanently.
Yeah.
For the younger ones, sometimes, so they see a life in Australia that really appeals to them, some of the things that they can't do here.
Yeah.
And perhaps the freedom to explore different areas of business and livelihoods that they can't do here. But very rarely actually, mostly people are quite happy to come back. You know, they have family here, they're established here already.
I was just talking to somebody through the week who did go to the US and spent some time in New York, and he was glad to come back. Just, he missed like we said, the pace of life here, you know. He could make money in that there, you know, he's not getting as much here, but it's just the lifestyle.
I think the stress, I think again, there's kind of an image maybe in some Lao people's minds of how everything is better in Western countries.
Yeah.
And then they get there and they realise, oh, hold on a minute, you know, it's not.
Yeah, and it's the cost of living, you know. Yeah, we do get paid more there, but you've got to balance with that with how much it actually costs to live there, you know.
And how much people are in debt and the stress that people are under. I mean, I think it becomes fairly obvious fairly quickly that it's just a different kind of life and different kinds of stresses.
Yeah.
It's not a kind of a land of massive opportunity in the way that they often think it is.
It wasn't until after my first trip here and I went back home I realised what the term rat race meant, going back home. You know, and it was everybody just speeding, you know, and up your backside in the car, and you know,
and
because you're sitting on the speed limit.
Yeah.
They're getting angry.
I think that kind of general sort of feeling of sort of people being quick to anger, quick to be frustrated.
Yeah.
Because everybody's stressed, you know, life is hard.
Yeah,
And
you're wasting my time. Hurry up.
Yeah.
You know, I've got to be there.
And funny, and I noticed that in the supermarkets, it's like, you know, when you see like a little old lady's in front of you and she's struggling to get money out of her purse and people are like tutting and huffing and stuff behind her, it's just like, just kind. Like, what is it going to cost you to just wait 5 minutes for this lady to sort herself out? You know, it's that kind of, because people are constantly under stress and time, you know, it makes people unpleasant to one another.
It's ingrained into you that time is money. You know, and
whereas here it's like, if you're sitting waiting for anything, or you're waiting for a bus, people wait and just have a chat.
Yeah.
So it's like, if somebody in front of you is struggling with their money, you'd have a joke and you'd have a laugh about it. Nobody gets uptight about it.
It's just time to chill. Just sit back, chill. Yeah.
It's 5 minutes. Who cares?
You said you've lived in a few other countries in Southeast Asia.
I lived in Japan for about nearly 7 years, in Spain, and in Chile, in South America. Were the three main places, and America for a while.
Why would you recommend to an expat living in Laos over Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand? What would be the pluses there?
I think it depends on what you're looking for in life. If you're the kind of person who needs sort of a lot of culture and a lot of entertainment, then Laos probably isn't the right country. Unless you, by entertainment, you mean kind of the entertainment that you make for yourself, you know, with your group of friends. It's not...
Yeah, an event over here is a wedding or a festival, you know, and which we've had few of lately, both festivals. And
so I think if you're looking... If you're the kind of person who sort of likes that sort of variety in terms of nightlife particularly, then I think somewhere like Vietnam or Thailand is a better choice, because places like Hanoi and Bangkok have so much to offer. But if you're the kind of person who likes a more chilled, calm, easygoing kind of lifestyle, then I think Laos is definitely... Laos is much less frenetic than other Asian countries. There's much less hassle here in general, and that means like people hassling you as well as daily hassle. I mean, I had quite a culture shock when I went to Vietnam from Laos. I'd lived here for about 2 or 3 years, and then I took a trip to Vietnam, and I found Vietnam so in your face. It was like, just back off and give me some space, and it was noisy and loud, and people were constantly like trying to grab me and ask me things or push things on me, and the markets were a nightmare in comparison to here, where I just used to, like, you know, poodle around and everyone would leave me alone until I started asking for things. And then the volume of noise I found in
They just
in
live
Vietnam.
on the horn of their bike. Beep, beep. It's
To me, it was like, whoa.
one country next door. They don't even know where the horn is here. You know, a lot of people.
And I like the quiet in Laos, the peace, I think, is a large part of. Even, I mean, you'll get a lot of people who say, like, living in Vientiane particularly, it can be very noisy, and it can. Lao people don't have the same feelings about noise pollution that a lot of foreigners do. So you might well end up next to neighbours
Who likes their music turned
and
right
they
up.
like their massive subwoofers to do their music through, and that can be a nightmare to live next to.
Yeah.
But by the same token, it's like, you know, you go out to the city, drive for like 15 minutes, and you've got an oasis of peace and quiet. It's a good place to come if you like your own company as well.
Yeah, it's what you're ready for in life, I think. You know, if you just want just a more relaxed pace of life. And like you said, you know, well, that's what I like about Vientiane. You know, in normal times, you could just duck across, and get a piece of that in Thailand. Go to Udon Thani, and
or have a weekend in Bangkok.
Yeah, you know, and then had enough. Let's go home, you know, and then just slink away back here. But
I think it's like having the best of both. I mean, let's say no country that you live in is ever perfect. So even your own home country, you know, you can look at the negative sides of it as well as the positive sides of it. But it's about, do you have access to the things that you need in terms of everyday life to make you happy?
Yeah.
And if you don't, can you gain access to that relatively easily?
Yeah. And you can gain most of those things now, but I think as far as the cultural type things, the events and stuff like that, sporting events, musicals, theatre, things like that, you do not have that here. But you could totally live here eating Western food, what you would back home. You could go to the movies, those sort of things you would not miss here. It's just those big events.
I mean, I think it's very much about what do you want out of life.
What you're used to having.
And if you do, I mean, if you're the kind of Westerner who wants to come here and live like a Westerner all the time, it's going to be expensive. I think it's about,
groceries will cost you more.
They will cost you a huge amount. I mean, I don't get that much, but I'll easily spend $100 on a weekly shop, close to $100, because I like things that just aren't usual here, and particularly
coffee's cheap here, but
coffee's lovely.
But it's the same. I just drink instant coffee, Nescafe. It's the same.
When you have the advantage of having Lao coffee here.
When I'm at the markets and that, I do. But I'm lazy. I just want my coffee fixed quick. Too lazy to spend the time making it. But that's what I found unusual. Some brands here are a lot cheaper to buy here in Laos, even though it's imported, than what it is back home. Like your Nescafe, things like that are bottled here, like Pepsi, our Hasip, which is around 50, 60 US cents. It's the same Pepsi we drink in Australia. It's just that in the first world, you were charged that much because you can pay that much, but they're charged a lot less here because wages are low here. It's all the same ingredients. It's the same size and that. There's no way I'd be able to buy a can of Pepsi or a bottle of Pepsi for 50 cents back home. You're looking at $3 to $4. If it was from a convenience store.
And then I think of how much I spend on a thing of butter, French butter. That's like $6.50 here.
I bought some New Zealand butter the other day, which was 70,000 kip.
That's about £4.50 in English. I mean, I would never pay £4.50 for a thing of butter in the UK. But here again, I have enough disposable income to buy the things that keep me kind of happy.
Exactly. And you're not having to budget to make ends meet here, I've found.
And I do love Lao food, so it's not like I'm eating that every day. Usually I tend to find it's my weekends, and it's the weekends when I sort of tend to want Western food more. And then during the week we often just pick up barbecue chicken and tao here at the market.
It's just so easy.
And nice. Takeaway food here is not, well, unless you go to the new shops that are opening up, but you know, street food here is healthy and delicious.
People are always asking me questions, you know, about getting sick from eating the street food and that. And what is your take on that? Why not? I have not had food poisoning here at all, not once.
As I say, I've lived here for 23 years. I've had food poisoning maybe about 4 times in total, and it's always been once it was from a watermelon, because well, obviously, like water, and I didn't know this until I got really sick on it, but sometimes, like, obviously watermelons soak up the water.
Okay.
So if the water is dirty, then you know it's full of grim bacteria. And also sometimes people inject watermelons to make them weigh more and be bigger. So that was the one that I got the worst sickness from. The other one was from a posh restaurant here. It was one of the like a posh floating restaurant, fish restaurant in Pakistan, I think, and it was considered like a good restaurant. And everybody else ate the same that I did, but I must have just had one bad bit of fish, and that made me like violently ill for an evening. But I have never ever been ill when I have eaten in remote villages.
No. Like you can
food here.
Sometimes you can look at it and you think, oh, it's a bit dicey, iffy, but no.
And the main reason being, I think, is because people cook everything fresh. So people don't store stuff. It's like you buy it, you cook it, you eat it.
That pig was in the paddock yesterday.
Yeah.
It's on the unrefrigerated bench top today. It'll be eaten tonight,
and that's done.
And it's a new pig tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, bacteria hasn't. You know, and even I've suggested to people all the time when they're actually buying meat that's already cooked, that's been sitting there. There's always a barbecue with hot coals next to it. Just heat it back up.
I've never been sick. I've never been sick from stuff like that. I mean, it used to be the one thing, like when I first came here, was ice cubes. So we didn't have as much of the clean water here as when I first. So you did have to be careful. So you might not want to ask for ice and stuff. I had a particularly awful friend of mine went on a bus trip down south, and she had a Pepsi in the bus station before she left with ice cubes in it. And about a couple of hours into her journey, on a bus, a crowded bus, was struck
Didn't
with
have toilet on the bus.
She couldn't even stand up. And that is my idea of a nightmare. It's like actually, like, you know, literally shitting yourself on a bus full of other people and having to sit there for hours.
Poor girl.
And that to me always made me very wary when I first came here. But it's never happened to me. I have never, not when I've been travelling, not when I've been moving around, not when I've lived in any of the villages or any of the places that I've lived in. And I find Lao people's hygiene is really good. Yeah. It might not be, like, again, I think sort of like fancy chef Western standards, like, you know, using this chopping board for this and that knife for that. But I'm a great believer in a bit of bacteria does you good. And as I said, I think you just build up resistance to it. But I would say the food prep.
I agree with. It is mainly, and I've said it before, I think the established restaurants where they keep food in the fridge, they bring it out, they use it. It could be sitting there for half hour, just heating up a little, and they'll put it back in the fridge. You don't know how many days that's come in and out of the fridge. And the time I did get violently ill, that was in the Philippines, and it was in just like a little hamburger joint, you know, where they just keep their mince, pull it out, make it. That mince could have been sitting on the bench top, and then I got it a couple of days later.
Yeah, I think that kind of stuff. I mean, you have to be. I mean, obviously, it's a very hot country, and I mean, I know, you know, when I first came here and I went to the markets and I saw, you know, the meat benches, and it's like 35 degrees outside, and there's raw meat, you know, sitting on a bench in a market that people are buying, but it's only been there. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how long meat has to stay to go bad, but I've just never had that experience here.
Yeah. Advice for women wanting to live in Laos.
It's a very safe country. You're not going to get catcalled or hassled in the same way that you would in many countries. However, it's a dating desert. It is a desert for single women here.
Yeah.
And
It'd be a good escape from the first world pressures of dating.
yes.
You think?
If you are happy not to date, so if you're married, great. If you have a partner to bring with you, but it's kind of the opposite for women in many ways than it is for men. So single men who come here get drowned in offers. Single women who come here, it's a bit more tricky.
Yeah.
And there just isn't there isn't much of a dating scene here. If you're young, if you're like 25, 26, if you're in 20s and you're looking for a life partner, you're going to have a hard time here. It's not, dating cross-culturally is possible.
Yeah.
And, you know, I do have friends who are married to Lao men and very happily, but it's perhaps not as easy a combination as a foreign man and a Lao woman. In terms of the sort of freedoms that you expect as a Western woman, it's perhaps a more tricky combination than it would be the other way around. I think it's a trickier dynamic with an Asian guy and a Western woman than it is the other way around.
The other way around, yeah.
And I think that's very much to do with our idea of what a woman's role is and what we should be able to expect from you. Can be quite tricky to balance that.
So have you got any advice for an expat coming over here?
I think it's like anywhere. If you come to a place, like anywhere, like, I mean, as I say, I've lived in a number of different places abroad, and if you're not working there, then that's not going to be how you meet people. So you have to find a way of meeting people, and it basically requires you to be more outgoing than perhaps you would be in your own country. You have to be prepared to start conversations with people. I mean, there's an undercurrent of very sad men who end up kind of washed up in Asia because they haven't really managed to make it anywhere else. And I don't mean to, but there are, because it's cheap, because it's kind of, they like the lots of aspects of Asia. She says, trying to be diplomatic. So well, I would say don't come here trying to be that kind of person.
No. If you're after those aspects, I've always said Thailand's got two things that Laos doesn't, and it's beaches and red light districts. You know, and it's not beaches that attract that many tourists, because a lot.
And there is an undercurrent of that here. But it's more. It's a lot more. It's less in your face than it is in Thailand. I think if you're coming here, you have to think about what do you want out of life. And if you want to establish networks and connections, you've got to be prepared to think about how you're going to do that. It's very easy to make friends with Lao people. It's very easy. You can start conversations with people anywhere.
It is, you know, it's just a matter of pulling up and watching a couture game. Somebody will come over and ask you, what are you doing, just to be friendly.
So I don't think it's difficult to become part of the community here, but you have to be prepared to make the effort. And not be, you know, superior white person, because that doesn't go down very well.
No, be humble.
I mean, I'd say if you really wanted to be part of that, but Vientiane is not the place to be. Like, go and live in the provinces. If you're going to retire here, go to a provincial town. Because it's a much smaller community, you will get to know people very, very quickly.
You get lost here.
Vientiane is an easy city, like any city, like main city. It's an easy city to just be on your own in. Luang Prabang, it would be lovely. Again, it's quite a small town. If you actually live there permanently, you become part of the community very quickly.
Okay, that's it.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of questions. Thank you very much, Lynn.
You're very welcome.
Big thank you to Lynn. We have covered a lot, but I'm sure there's a lot of questions I did miss, obvious ones and things like that, but it was just good to find out her perspective, her experiences in life in Laos here, and it does match a lot of my feelings that I have, even though we've butted heads on traffic issues and you crashing your motorbike and things like that.
Yes, our feelings on traffic. I'm never going to be alone.
Yeah, it's different ways we look at life, I guess. I'm more adventurous, and it is an adventure getting onto the roads here, and it's exciting. But to others, other people just like to get their shopping done without being killed, I guess.
Yeah, generally speaking, yeah.
Okay, Lynn, thanks very much. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Bye. Okay, guys, that was a lot of fun catching up and getting to know Lynn a lot better, and her life and experiences here in Laos over the last 23 years. I've had to chop that up a lot because we sat here for a couple of hours just gas bagging. She did have a lot of cool stories and things like that, and we just kept drifting off onto other tangents. If specific questions you want answered from somebody who does have 23 years experience here, I'm sure Lynn wouldn't mind coming back and answering some of those questions for you. So let us know in the comments below if you'd like to like me to ask her over again and ask some questions for you. We'll try to make them a little bit more direct and straight to the point, just so it doesn't turn into 2-3 hours that she was here. Next time I'm gonna have a beer here for you, Lynn. Oh, okay. Again, thank you so much for coming over. It was great to meet you, and I hope we can sit down and do it again sometime. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Bye bye.